Hello and welcome to Dice Masters United. I'm Spug.
I'm Ben.
I'm James.
And I'm Peter.
Coming up in this episode,
we'll be looking back to the early days of the game and talking about the cards from the Avengers vs. X-Men set that would be ripe for a reprint.
James has been testing out how competitive Half-Elf Bard would be in today's modern format. What did he find? And how badly did he get stomped?
And we'll be revealing the results of our poll to discover the best 2-cost card in Modern.
All that and more in the latest episode of Dice Masters United.
Okay, so as we remain in this lull between sets and wait for any new spoilers, there isn't a great deal going on. So we thought we'd have a look back, reflect on some of the earlier sets, and think about what might be fun in today's modern meta. And we're going to start where it all began for Dice Masters back in 2014 with the very first set, Avengers vs. X-Men, and have a bit of chat about some of the cards from that set, some of the ones we enjoyed, and some of the ones that could be fun if they were to make a comeback now. Now, Ben and I both started playing in those heady Avengers vs. X-Men days. James and Peter, you were a little later, weren't you? Maybe you were more Age of Ultron time, is that right?
That's right. That's right for me,
Yeah.
Civil War-ish.
So your memory's maybe not quite as strong, but certainly the AvX set is responsible for some real meta-defining favourites, including, of course, Black Widow Serena, which is a real powerful super rare, Green Goblin Gobby, which of course was another super rare and another very powerful card, and then of course the rare Wolverine that got a buff when he attacked on his own. Those were all really huge cards in those early days. But today we're going to focus on some of our favourites, cards that have persisted and what we think might be ripe for a reprint. Now, James, let's start with you when we talk about a few faves. What were some of your faves from that particular set?
Well, I didn't really play, as we've said, I joined about a year later, so I didn't really play it in isolation. So my first favourite was very definitely Green Goblin Norman Osborn, which was the rare. Everybody remembers the common, which was for the flying psychics, giving you psychics a buff, and the super rare, which was the Gobby that you've already mentioned. But Norman Osborn is, well, first of all, it's called Norman Osborn, which is fantastic because I love myself some Normie. Honestly, not that fussed on the ability. It's pretty good, but it's when fielded, you may roll up to 2 psychic dice from your used pile. So, definitely useful. It is a 4-cost bolt though, so it's not really about that. It's more about the global, which says pay a bolt and knock out one of your sidekick characters to deal 2 damage to a target character. And I played that with Alfred and Bruce Wayne, rare from World's Finest. And it's great because Bruce Wayne says you can capture stuff, basically, while he's active. When one of your character dice is KO'd, you can place a Batman die from your bag or use pile in the field zone at level 3, which is lovely. But also, and more importantly, you can capture a level 1 or 2 character die, which you have to return at the end of your turn. And then Alfred, the uncommon, is an ally, so counts as a psychic when he's in the field, so you can knock him out with the global.
Yeah.
And you get to do another 2 damage to something else. And Alfred being knocked out triggers Bruce Wayne.
Yes.
So you get to capture something, and if you've got a Batman handy, you can put it in the field. And of course, Alfred, once he's knocked out, and it is a genuine knockout, you can roll a psychic die or a Batman die from your used pile. And if it comes up as energy, then you get to put Alfred back in the field at level 1. Fantastic shenanigans there.
The horrendous thing about Green Goblin was the fielding cost. Just 0-1-1 for 5-5 on top level for 1 fielding, and all his things are when fielded. Like, that was the disgusting thing about him.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we touched on the super rare, didn't we, of course, which says when fielded, Green Goblin deals 1 damage to your opponent for each sidekick. In the field, count your sidekicks only. But yeah, I mean, that was horrific, really. And because if you had 3 or 4 sidekicks, that would be 3 or 4 damage. And then if it came up on level 3, it'd be a 5/5. It's just
in this set by itself, it was almost unplayable. Like, that's how strong it was. Like, just, I remember the first time I played against Green Goblin, Gobby, and I was just like, I don't understand how, like, that card isn't, like, in the bin. Because I just don't know how to beat it.
Yeah. I remember the first time I ever saw Dice Masters in the flesh, I went into a local board game shop where they were selling it, and I played a little demo game, and there was a guy there who bought a few packs, and he ripped one open, and he was like, oh, look, this one, Green Goblin, Gobby. Oh, it's got like a red line on it. Oh, that looks pretty cool. And little did I know just how amazing that card was at that point.
I never got Gobby until years later when the shiny ones were released, whenever that was, like 2017 or something, 80.
Yeah.
And I got a shiny one, but I never had the original.
No, me neither, James. So that was certainly a hard one to get.
I did.
Peter, what? Well, of course.
And the promo Black Widow.
Yeah. Show off.
Also, can I just mention the artwork? I have talked about this on the art videos that we did, but I absolutely,
because we don't talk about artwork on a podcast, do we? But anyway, go on, Karen.
On this occasion, we are going to. I absolutely adore the artwork on the. Everybody knows Gobby. You know what it looks like, and you know, I knew that card very well, and I hadn't really been reading comics since I was a teenager, and then I got back into reading comics, and I was reading the Dark Reign arc where Norman Osborn sort of takes over stuff, and I think it was in the Dark X-Men, one of the Dark X-Men comics, and they're exploring Norman Osborn's mind and trying to sort of rescue him from the Green Goblin, and there's a bit where it says they're sort of finding their way in there, and then somebody from the darkness says, "You really have dialed the wrong number. I'm glad it's a mistake, though, and not a rescue attempt. I mean, I'd hate to have to be indebted." And then it switches to that image, and I just hadn't realised it came from there. And I suddenly saw this Gobby image, and the speech bubble which is emitted from the card says, "To those I'm about to kill." I love it. Anyway, carry on.
Very good. No, it is a great image, and it is a great card. Peter, what were some of your faves from that set?
Well, one of the first cards I acquired from that set when I started playing was the Rare Nova, which was awesome, but also was a bit too good for my local playing group. So I played it once against a friend of mine, and he almost quit the game after that.
And you've been doing that to people ever since.
Yeah.
What does he do, just for people who not familiar?
Yeah, so the Rare Nova, when he gets damaged in an attack step, he deals 2 damage to your opponent, just like the Iceman does these days.
Yes.
So that was the OG with that ability, and it was super strong with something like Magic Missile, of course, to ping him.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really good. I mean, of course, when it first came out in isolation, Nova didn't have Magic Missile or any.
Yeah. So it wasn't that great at the time, but it became super awesome later.
Yeah, it sure did. I mean, obviously, yeah, you've kind of stuck with that theme, haven't you? Being now a veteran Iceman player.
Yeah, of sorts.
You kind of stuck with that. I mean, that particular Nova was a 5-cost, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it had better stats than the current Iceman in that he's
slightly better, yeah.
256, 277. So you could, when Magic Missile came along, you could potentially get 7 pings out of him.
Yeah.
His high side.
I mean, one of the things that's underrated probably about the Iceman and this Nova as well is you can just throw them at your opponent. Like, they kind of have to let them through or block them and take some pings.
Yeah, especially with the level 3 Nova, they're going to want to block that because it's 7/7. so they're going to take
if you've
damage.
pinged
Anyway.
it 6 times already.
Yeah. Okay. Take 2 more or take 7 more. Your choice.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Or force a bunch of blockers. It's even more fun.
Yeah, was there a way of doing that then? There was a...
I don't know. There were forced attacks.
Not in set. No, I don't think so.
No,
There were forced attacks, but no forced blocks, I think.
Forced blocks, yeah. Ben, do you want to pick up one of yours?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like mine are slightly underpowered. I went for definitely a more obscure favorites than you guys. I'm going to talk about Gambit, and not even the Gambit everyone likes, which was the common, which let you re-roll a die or roll a die from your bag. But this is Gambit Card Sharp, who's the rare. And when fielded, you may draw and roll 1 die. If you roll a character side, that character deals damage equal to its attack to your opponent and goes to the use pile. This is it's just a really interesting ability. I like abilities. Another similar card in this set is the Loki, but I like it when you can kind of do damage surprisingly. Gambit kind of has that. When you field it, you can draw, and with stuff like Professor X Ramp, which came out obviously the next set, the fact that you could thin your bag so much that basically anything you bought that turn would be immediately rolled by Gambit is interesting.
Yeah.
And it's fun when it comes off. I think I once did a Wolverine, rolled on level 3. So I fielded a Gambit, rolled a Wolverine on level 3, did 8 damage. And that's really satisfying, but it's a really fun ability that makes use of churning your bag in a very interesting way.
Yeah, because I always thought that Gambit, the common 3-cost Gambit, who enables you to draw and roll a die when you field him, was always a lot of fun. But of course, one of the annoying things about him was his fielding cost, wasn't it? Because even though it was a 3-cost, his fielding was like 1-1-2.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Like Gobby was 1-5-5 on top level, and this was 2-4-4, and it's like, well, that's a bit unfair. Like Gobby does like 10 damage to me, and Gambit rolls a die. But yeah, it was like early ramp, right? There wasn't that much ramp in set, and the 3-cost Gambit was good, but the 5-cost Gambit is worth playing around with, especially if you can get like Professor X ramp or something that clears your field, clears your bag all the time.
Yeah, no, he was good. I remember him fondly. Can I mention one of mine? I've got. I wanted to talk about War Machine because I thought that War Machine was great fun in this early set, and he kind of wasn't really one that was played a massive amount because he was a 5-cost, but the uncommon War Machine, who's Parnell Jacobs, was a 5-cost shield, and he says War Machine can't be blocked if you have Iron Man fielded, and he had a 1-3-4, 1-4-5, 2-5-6 stat line. So he wasn't tiny. I mean, he wasn't obviously massive for a 5-cost, particularly when you compare him to some of the big ones, even something like Nova. But the fact that you could get an Iron Man out, I mean, you could get a cheap Iron Man for 4 in this set, and then later on, was it Age of Ultron where a 3-cost Iron Man came? I think.
Yeah.
To have anytime you have an unblockable character is always cool. And although this War Machine wasn't exactly the strongest competitive card, any kind of unblockable thing that can do a decent amount of damage was always cool. So I always enjoyed a bit of War Machine, and he had a nice little kind of synergistic global, which says when one of your shield characters damages your opponent in the attack step, pay a shield to gain 1 life. So you could also use it kind of defensively as well. Did any of you guys use this card at all?
No.
No, I did. It's a bit too expensive.
Yeah, it was fun for casual games, mostly for me.
Yeah, for sure.
I like the rare one, which knocked a character out if you had a Iron Man fielded.
Yeah, that was cool. I don't think I ever had a copy of that.
I think I've actually only got one War Machine die, and it's all sort of chipped, and all the patterns come off it. I'm not sure. I'm not even sure I've got a card to go with it.
Oh dear. Oh, that is a bit sad.
I'll survive.
James, what else did you pick out as one of your other favourites?
Punisher McRook, because mainly because I like Punisher, really. Nice picture. It's a 4-cost bolt, and it says, when Punisher assigns to attack, knock out one target opposing character, your opponent may prevent this effect by paying 2 life.
Yes.
That's the first. The first step is, okay, right, so it's while attacks, that's great. And they've got a choice to make. They can either lose a character, which, you can do that with a psychic several times, then you might start losing, more important things.
Yeah.
Or you can pay 2 life. Well, if you want to pay 2 life, go ahead. And then you've got to deal with his stats, because he's got 1/1/2 fielding, which is not too bad, but is 4/1, 5/2, 6/3.
Yeah.
6/3 on his top side, lovely. So then you have to decide whether you want to block him. He'll probably get knocked out, but he'll quite likely kill whatever you block him with. Or do you want to let him through and see the back of him for a bit and not deal with his when attacks next time, but take 4, 5, or 6? You choose. It's full of great choices, I think.
Ben, did you? I know that you played with this quite a bit, eh?
He's a jerk, isn't he? Punisher. It's just, kind of like that. It's really, I think when I look back at AvX, the thing that I remember is walls of characters, like just massive walls everywhere. And this was like one of the main ways to kind of get around that. And it definitely lent to a play style that kind of got refined later on with Guy Gardner. But kind of just this idea that you attack every turn with Punishers, just get as many as you can going and just swing at your opponent. And I hated him. I hated playing against him, but there's something very satisfying about playing with him.
Yeah, he was good fun in draft. And of course, in those days, the start player would roll 4 dice on their opening turn, so you could even buy one on your opening turn, which is always pretty fun.
Ooh. Cool die as well. Punisher logo.
The rare was pretty cool as well. Actually, the rare was one of the last ones I got, but big nothing. Yeah, when he was silenced to attack, he deals 2 damage to each opposing character, but your opponent can pay 4 life to prevent it. Which is just funny. Breath Weapon 2 or pay 4 life.
Yeah, that is a tough decision. That's good fun. He's a 6-cost, wasn't he? That big fat, the big fat rare, but that is certainly some difficult decisions you're going to be making there. Peter, I think you wanted to mention an old friend of the Fantastic Four.
Yes, I really like the common Doctor Doom from AvX. It was a 5-cost, and while he was active, all non-villain characters would get -1 attack, -1 defense.
Yes.
So he would wipe out all the sidekicks unless they were bumped somehow. And it was a good deal of fun with the aforementioned Alfred, because that one on level 1 had 1 defense, so he would keep getting KO'd. And if you paired that with something like retaliation, that got out of hand pretty quickly.
Pretty fast. Yeah, in other words, the retaliation is an effect that when one of your characters is KO'd, you get to do something nasty, usually, isn't it?
Well, you deal 1 damage to your opponent, basically.
Right, yeah. The other thing about the other weird thing about this Doctor Doom is the fact that he affects all your characters as well as your opponents. So it's kind of weird.
I think it's quite appropriate that you just nobody can field sidekicks while Doom's in the field. Well, they can field them, I suppose, but they lose them.
Yeah,
they'll all die immediately. Yeah, he was.
I like that.
He was cool. I mean, I remember, in the days of kind of trying to play in the first kind of UK Dice Masters Nationals in 2015, where everybody knew that Gobby and Serena were going to be huge. I was trying to find ways of trying to get around that, because I didn't have a Gobby beforehand, and I was really, this was one of the cards that I looked at to try to just get around that, because it would obviously mean that your opponent would have no sidekicks in their field if he was out. But the problem was that he was a villain, and there was a global that I think we're going to talk about a little bit later that enabled you to re-roll a villain die. So That wasn't always ideal, because often Gobby players would have that on their own team. He was fun. What do you think about him, Ben?
My thing with Doom was that he just kind of paled in comparison to Venom Angelo Fortunato. Which was one more expensive, but gave all non-fist characters -2, opposing non-fist characters -2/-2. And that, to me, was much more of a power card than Dr. Doom. But in that combo where you get rid of sidekicks for your Alfred, Dr. Doom really shined. It was also interesting, his uncommon had the global, if you have a villain fielded, pay a shield to give target character -1 and -1 defense. -1 attack, -1 defense. Which is kind of interesting as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, we've barely even started talking about some of this, but it's just extraordinary what an incredible kind of power set this first Avengers vs. X-Men set was, in terms of just the sheer number of great cards and great abilities that came out.
If you think about like Venom, like that haunted me for so long. I just would always include a fist card on my teams just so I didn't have to have all my characters KO'd all the time. And there's so many of those examples, like Serena, you always had to have a way of spinning up your characters, or always have cheap characters that you could put out really quickly.
Yeah. What was your other one, Ben, that you wanted to draw out as a good old fave?
Probably the worst card that we're going to talk about today. But I loved him. It was Thing Grim Ben. So his text reads, it's basically underdog, but the official text is, at the start of the attack step, if your opponent has more fielded characters than you, Thing gets +3 attack and +3 defense. So he's a 5-cost fist and a Fantastic Four affiliation, because that's very useful. But I don't know. I just kind of like he's called Ben, and the Thing is a cool character anyway. But I used him for ages. I don't really know why. I just wanted a big static character for cheap. And on top level, he's 8/8. And then with the fielded characters, he becomes an 11/11, which is pretty funny for a 5-cost card. And yeah, I don't know. Just something cool to me about him before I really worked out how terrible Underdog is. But yeah, Proto Underdog. He's called Ben. He's a Fantastic Four member. Got to give him some love. I really like this card.
Yeah. I think he is a lot of fun. I remember looking at him back in the day, and the one of the major drawbacks with him is the massive kind of wonkiness of his stats. Because I mean, his, for the 3 versions of him, I think are 5, 6, and 7 cost in this set, and he has fielding costs of 1 on level 1, 2 on level 2, and 3 on level 3. But though you mentioned obviously his level 3 side is big, his level 1 side is only 3/3, which is like horrid, beyond. It is,
horrid. But like I said, with Serena rolling about, you always had a spin up global of some kind, or a way to spin stuff up. The mutation global, I think, was like the big one for that. You spin one character down, spin another character up. So I just had a space on my team, and the Thing was the one to fill it. I don't know why. I can't explain why, but I remember rocking with him for ages. Because he's the Thing.
And we haven't seen him since. We haven't seen him since.
No, but I hope he comes back, and I hope his stats are just as ridiculous as they were in this set.
No, I think I can see why you picked the Thing as a fave, because he is fun, and it's always nice to have some Fantastic Four love in there. The final one I wanted to mention, just in terms of favourites, is a bit of a cliche, to be honest, is Old Hulk Green Goliath, which is the card that everybody knew and everybody was playing with at the time. He was another huge, big statted character, but he had an amazingly useful ability, in the sense that it said when he's a 6-cost fist, and he said whenever you or Hulk takes damage, knock out one of whenever you or Hulk takes damage, you deal 2 damage to each opposing character. But obviously when he was on his burst phase, which is level 1 or level 2, then he dealt 3 damage instead. So if you could find a way of damaging him or damaging yourself, then, and there was the handy Silver Surfer global in the set where you could pay a shield and take 2 damage to draw a die and place it in your prep area, then you could just take damage kind of on demand. And then you could trigger him. And obviously later on, when we got Magic Missile, which enabled us to pay a bolt to damage a character, then you could do it 2 or 3 times very easily in a turn.
It became full on cheese.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So he was great, and I know he was everywhere at the time. He was great fun, but he always felt like he was a cornerstone of a lot of the teams that I played then, because he was great for clearing the board and then obviously being a big beefy presence, because he was a 6, 7, 8 attack on his 1, 2, 3 levels. So
yeah, I used to like the interplay between Green Goliath and Jade Giant as well. That was kind of a fun little meta.
Oh yeah.
Thing. So obviously Green Goliath does damage across the board, but Jade Giant does a targeted KO when you or him take damage. Yeah. So if you had Green Goliath and they had Jade Giant, they would win. But in almost all other scenarios, Green Goliath was the better card to have in isolation.
That's definitely true. Yeah, Jade Giant was a good situational choice, wasn't it?
It was brilliant until we worked out Imprisoned and Barred. And then Green Goliath were just kind of on our team for no reason.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's some of our faves. I mean, one of the things that this set did give us was a load of stuff that has persisted. Like, maybe it wasn't presented in exactly the way that it's been termed now, and obviously a lot of the stuff have turned into keywords. Ben, tell us about Angel, for example, Angel Soaring.
Yeah, so there was a thing. I guess it was kind of my earliest spam theme, I suppose, if you want to put it that way. Just like Angel Soaring Rush, I guess it was called. I guess there was Gobby Rush as well, with like the old thing to do, just buy as many Gobbies. But I wasn't as prestigious until a long time later when I got the Super Rare Gobby. But Angel Rare was basically just, if you used an action, he was unblockable. And in draft, you could get him and then just get all the angels and then do nothing but use like Gearing Up or something and and loads of angels and just have them all out, just keep swinging with them. Yeah, good fun. Not quite the stats to last now. Yeah. 2-2, 3-3, 3-4, which isn't the best, but not bad, especially at the time, as a cheap unblockable shield.
Yeah. That was the first kind of obscure. Peter, Cyclops gave us an early breath weapon, I think, and 1 or 2 other little tricks as well. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so you have the Cyclops if looks could kill. It's not exactly breath weapon, but it does wipe out the whole field, because when you attack with him, he deals his damage to all opposing characters, but not for free. You don't have to pay for it, but it doesn't deal the damage to your opponent.
No,
but it's an amazing board wipe. It's so hard to play against, because if you have something, most people won't have anything that's going to survive that. So if you just swing with that and a couple other things, you basically win, as Ben showed a couple of weeks ago in the dice fight. And there's the other Cyclops, Scott Summers, which has an ability that later returned on what's his face, Two-Face.
Two-Face.
So that is the if he's blocked, you may have him deal damage to your opponent instead of the blockers. I think Two-Face also did it to his blockers. And then Cyclops will go to your use pile. So it's basically like he's unblocked, even if he's blocked. So yeah, that was also pretty cool, but not quite as impactful as the other one.
No, but that rare, I just didn't even realize it until I did kind of like some research and looking up some of the cards for this episode. That never even crossed my mind that we'd see, because we saw it quite a few times in DC. We saw that Two-Face, and there was a Dick Grayson that you could combo with, thing where instead of doing damage to your blockers, you could do it to your opponent and then you get use pile. But yeah, apparently it was in AvX all along.
Yeah, hiding in plain sight. I mean, for a 7 cost, obviously, so it's pretty expensive. I think it was almost, certainly in that first set, it was almost unplayable, wasn't it? Because there wasn't really the tools to get you there very easily. But
Yep.
once the Professor X Global came along, that made it a bit easier. James, do you want to shout out another card for us that maybe still persists today, maybe in a slightly different form?
Well, there was the Throne Car thing and Dr. Octopus, one of them. They both had basically what was proto Overcrush text. It said, they deal the characters that the Throne Car is applied to, or Doc Ock deal whatever damage is in excess of the blocker's defense to the opponent. So I really like the way in AvX you sort of see, obviously, as the first release set, you see how these abilities, which later get coded as keywords, started off, and they managed to refine the wording. Generally speaking,
yeah. And if anybody wants to see a frankly horrifying use of that Dr. Octopus Overcrush ability, then you should watch our 6x6x6 video.
That's actually a different one, because that one has Overcrush itself, the one that I was talking about. The one in the video deals his damage to all characters that block him, but he doesn't innately have Overcrush.
Oh, yes.
And there's also the one Cyclops, which wasn't mentioned, which is maybe called Slim. Is that the one?
Yeah.
Does the same thing, which is brilliant. And it's also on Justice, which is from Civil War. Each of those 3 characters deals their damage to everything that blocks them, which if you can make multiple things, or especially multiple psychics, block them, and crucially give it Overcrush using something with a pump, something which gives +3, like, for example, anger issues, then you will be dealing that damage, that pumped up damage, through each of the blockers, and if they're just psychics, then you just take one off and, and you kill people easily. Yes, go watch the video. I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, it's totally obscene. It really is. But yes, I don't have fond memories of that game. Although it was fun. It was to roll lots of dice.
I think you must be having sort of the same experience that Zach sometimes had. we agree to play something sort of light-hearted, and I accidentally bring something horrible. I didn't realise it was quite that bad, but then it was. Sorry, Zach. Sorry, Spud.
Ben, what about Ghost Rider? What did that bring us that still persists?
Just the Ghost Rider being terrible in general.
Yes.
And the legacy of keyworded blank cards, I suppose.
Yes.
Characters without text, just a low-cost die with good numbers.
But they weren't even good.
No,
but anyway.
they weren't even good.
Yes. Indeed, yeah. Bit of a cheap shot, but no, that was cool. And then, of course, there was Loki Gemkeeper, who was a 5-cost rare and another great card that still persists in numerous forms now. So he was a 5-cost mask who said, when fielded, choose an opponent's character card, cancelling all previous choices. Your opponent cannot field that character while Loki is effective, while Loki is active. So, of course, that's an ability that still persists on Drax, for example, today.
Yeah, I mean, talk about power creep with that Drax, though. It's like, yeah, but that Drax got dropped down two cost, and now they can't buy the die either.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Certainly, control has become a lot stronger, hasn't it? With that, but that was an early thing. So those are some of the ones that still kind of persist now in terms of some of the themes and that kind of stuff. So what do we reckon would be ripe for a reprint? Ben, I know there was one you were particularly keen to talk about.
Oh yeah, definitely.
In this bracket.
So I think we've kind of intimated it, probably outright said it, but AvX was awful for ramp.
Yeah.
Outside of one card, which was Beast Mutate 666. And the problem with that, obviously, I think it was a starter card, wasn't it? So it wasn't even in draft.
Yeah,
so in draft, you were really stuck for ramp. And if you ever drafted AvX, just I don't know what you can do to help yourself, but it's definitely not keep a lean field. You got to get all the characters out you can. But Beast kind of helped with that because every time Beast blocked, you drew 1 die and put it in your prep area. So prep the die.
Yeah.
And then on a burst phase, you could draw 2 dice and then choose between them. But it's just a brilliant die, brilliant character. Was the only way to ramp, and you could block with multiple things. And when people realized that kind of went to town on force attacking 1 thing and then blocking with 4 beasts, prep 4 dice. And that was kind of the first, like, Bruce level of prepping and ramping. I think this thing would really be a really fun die to get back in the meta.
Yeah, it totally would. And he, of course, he was only a 2 cost. I'm not sure if you mentioned that, but it was so he was super cheap. You know, his stats were, but you know, well, they were. He was just a 0-1-2, 0-2-3, 1-2-4. So his fielding costs were nice and cheap, and he was cool. Yeah, I mean, he was. It would be a lot of fun to have someone like him in the meta now. I mean, obviously we have one version of the Collector, don't we, from the latest Infinity Gauntlet set that does kind of
2 dice.
Prep 2 dice when he blocks, but he's a 6 cost. So
yeah, it'd just be nice to have Beast, you know, you get a few out, and then even if they have rare Spider-Man, they're spinning out your Drax constantly. Well, at least you're getting some ramp out of it.
What else do we want to mention in this little reprint section? Who wants to bring something else up?
I always like the rare Deadpool, the Chiyo no Sake.
Oh, yeah.
When he attacks, he forces a character to block, and then when he KOs that character, he will deal 2 damage to all opposing characters. So that's a really cool card. Yeah. And you know, it's I'll just force a sidekick to block, and then everything dies. It's nice.
That's another card I never had.
Oh,
I had to make do with Jack, I think, which was like the common or the uncommon. He was alright.
Uncommon, yeah, he was good.
That was fun too.
Yeah, this was actually the first card I bought on eBay, so that's
really?
a bit of a momentous occasion. But yeah, no, he was a jerk, right? Because they'll always choose a character that they can kill, probably like a psychic or something, and then like even if you added extra blockers, it didn't do anything.
Yeah.
So it's just a terrible card to get around.
Yeah. Yeah, he was kind of fun in draft, wasn't he? I think. You know, I mean, he was a 5 cost, obviously, but he would be a cool thing that would give you, as you were saying earlier, there tended to be a bit of walling up, didn't there, in some of these early games? So something that could clear a whole load of sidekicks and maybe some other cheaper stuff too was always really cool. So
yeah, speaking of getting rid of sidekicks, one of the other ones I thought would be good for reprint would be the 4 cost Storm. And Storm across all her versions of this set was pretty brilliant.
Yes.
But most of them have seen kind of reprints. The kind of reroll ones have seen like when fielded reroll stuff. We've seen on Becky obviously, but Goddess of the Plains, which is the 4 cost one, and that's when Storm attacks, reroll each of your opponent's characters, place any die that does not result in a character in your opponent's prep area.
Yeah.
It would just be really fun. I think kind of we were talking about this a little bit, and while that card is really good, actually, do you want to reroll out all your opponent's Becky's or Pips or whatever?
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't do anything against Godcatcher tokens, for example, but it would be a really interesting kind of way to bring this back in, and we need some more board clears, I feel like.
Yeah.
Could be good on a Godcatcher team, though.
It would be good on a Godcatcher team, yeah.
Oh, dear.
That's an idea. That'd be really funny. And kind of, I don't know, I kind of like that idea of the, Goddess of the Plains with Godcatcher. That's kind of cool, like little thematic.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it kind of feels like it's an interesting one because obviously, you know, while, for example, the 5 cost Windrider, who re-rolled 2 opposing characters and did, sent those characters that didn't roll back as characters to the use pile and did 2 damage for each one of those that didn't come out as characters. That was obviously really strong and really powerful. This kind of 4 cost one, I think is fun and interesting without being totally unbalanced. But it does kind of have an interesting result as well, in the sense that it gets your opponent to re-roll all of their characters, and obviously gets around any targeting as well, of course, doesn't it? Because it's, you know,
the interesting thing about this card was that, it was a kind of risk. It was kind of like a little bit of a, were you going to just get really unlucky and they just rolled back all their stuff and did nothing?
On higher levels.
and you don't know until you've attacked, so it's kind of fun that way. I really like this with the X23 super rare, where after you roll all the stuff, you roll the stuff from the prep area, so you could trigger this first, roll all that stuff out, then roll it again, and there was lots of rolling, and it was kind of probably too high, what's the word? Random number generators, RNG, was terrible, but it was an interesting, little risky maneuver. It'd be fun to see it back.
It would be fun to see that back. And I think there was one other card that you wanted to mention, wasn't there, Ben? That would be fun. We're talking about Thor, eh?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could talk about tons of these characters, right? Because all of this set was just ridiculous. But Thor, God of Thunder, was just hilarious. So Thor, God of Thunder, which was the uncommon, at the start of the attack step, Thor gets +4 attack and +4 defense for each opposing fist character in the field. And I mean, it was already, we talked about the Thing earlier with terrible stats with the buff. But this was a 1/5/6, a 2/6/8, and a 3/8/8.
Oh, yeah.
And then you get +4 for each fist. So you could get like, if they had 5 fist characters out, then you get +20/+20, which is just hilarious. But like, wouldn't this be good? I was thinking about this, if it was just reprinted to say, for each shield character, each opposing shield character would be really funny with all the Beckys. Like if they have a couple of Beckys out, or a Drax or something, and then you suddenly are getting +4/+4, +8 +8 on a big stat dude anyway. Don't know, that'd just be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, that would be insane. Yeah, if they were having lots of weenie characters that they were swarming with or something, then the buff could be ridiculous. And of course, the other thing to mention is that this particular Thor was an Avenger, and there was, of course, in set there was Nick Fury Patch, who doubled the damage that was dealt by your unblocked Avenger character dice. So,
that was true. Even the Nick Fury that made Avengers free to field or whatever was a really good one.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah. Mr. Anger.
Yeah, he was. I mean, there were so many. I mean, that would be a lot of fun now. I mean, maybe not necessarily hugely competitive, this Thor, but it would be a lot of fun to see something like that again. And at any time you can get a character that gets to about 20 attack or something is great fun. But there are loads of things.
+4/+4 versus masks, because then you could just kill Oscar for once and for all. Screw Oscar.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is loads of cards that we didn't even mention in this set that we haven't even talked about. I mean, like Human Torch, for example, which was massive.
He's a jerk.
Yeah.
He is so thematic.
Looking at you, Nick.
Human Torch.
Yeah.
I love that idea. That was probably the card that I was like, wow, I could really see the thematic elements of this game.
What, that he's a jerk and he's
a jerk. It's just a jerk.
Really annoying.
He's throwing fireballs like the pathetic character he is, hiding behind the thing, doing nothing.
Cool. Well, those are some of our thoughts on some of the cards that we enjoyed and some of the ones that we think might make a kind of fun return to the modern meta. What do you think about this? Are there any particular ones that you would fancy seeing coming back in today's meta, or there are some that you definitely wouldn't want to see? Do let us know, and we might read out your comment in a future episode of the show. But let's move on to the next segment. Okay, so in the last episode, we talked about how powerful Half-Elf Bard Master Lords Alliance would be in the current modern meta. Well, we discussed how powerful we thought it might be. It was banned from Modern after dominating the competitive circuit in 2016 and then rotated out. But in the last episode, we talked about how strong it would be in today's modern meta, taking into account factors such as the wealth of removal tools that are now available to players. And James, you've been testing this out with friend of the pod, Nick Wiley, to face off on a few games. How did you get on, and what did you discover?
Oh, it was really nice to play a few games with Nick, and we could do with playing a few more. I'll preface this by saying we started off with Bard versus Bard, but it would be interesting to play Bard versus teams which are dedicated to some other win con, like Becky or Godcatcher. And I think we might carry on with that a little bit. But preliminary impressions were that he's pretty good. He's not, he's not as dominant as he was because certain things are lacking. You can't do the really rushy stuff because you've got no way of getting multiple different characters into the field really quickly without Miri Riam, although Nick did a fine job of trying.
He tried using the rush ability, didn't he, with the yawning portal.
Which meant he could get, he was rushing with, Rocket Raccoon, who rushes off shields. And obviously, Bard is a shield and, we had other shields on the team. So it worked out pretty well. And I was trying to do something similar with Atlantis, although I don't think I actually managed to do that at all. It's quite hard to do the rushy bit. And then when you don't have the rushy bit, then you end up with walls. And then you're in need of a bit of a board clear. And we don't have, as Ben's just mentioned in the previous segment, we don't have lots of board clear options. We're missing some, like, one die solution, like imprison, God forbid, or cloud kill.
Yes, coming to the dark side.
I had something on my team. I had the Kane, although I didn't buy it. There's a Kane Seething Corruption, which I'm quite fond of at the moment. But both of us decided that maybe Venerable Dreadnought might provide that board clear. Since you're trying to build a field, you're probably going to have a fair few characters. So maybe that would be something to investigate. I'd quite like to play it again, actually. And yes, it was an interesting thing. So it was quite strong, but I mean, I think what we decided last time was that it's not quite it wasn't quite as dominant as it used to be because it lacked these things. And also because, of course, I wasn't really expecting Nick to bring Becky, but of course he did. But, in his defense, I did bring Danny Moonstar, so I suppose fair enough. I mean, trying to build a field with multiple Beckys floating around is not the easiest, although I think it's doable. I mean, if you had a team designed to re-roll your psychics constantly, then you might not fare too well. But I think that's well worth investigating. So strong, but perhaps not, as dominant as it used to be. I think that was our conclusion.
Yeah, and so you've recorded a couple of videos. I mean, it would be fun to see how it faced off against some of the totally different options, like, the Thor Super Rare team. Or
I had a plan to relearn how to play those because I've not been playing very much, not been playing much top tier stuff recently. But in the end, of course, I didn't have time. But I think I might have a go because it'd probably do me some good. Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, and I guess even with using like the Proxima Midnight that gives your shield, that gives reductions in the cost of characters and that kind of thing, maybe could be fun. Although I guess... Oh,
you love that sort of stuff, don't you? It's all just prevaricating from my point of view, all this reduction business. Buying one thing to reduce another thing.
We'll have to do my shield team and I'll put Bard on it and you can play Godcatcher or Becky.
Okay. Yeah, it's delayed gratification, James.
It's just messing about. Just buy the thing that you were bloody reducing.
So if anybody wants to watch any of those games, they have found their way to the YouTube channel, haven't they? I think, James.
Indeed, there are two. We did one which took about half an hour. I edited it down, but the first 10 minutes is I was explaining the team, so the game's not that long. I think it was quite all right. Nick mentioned that he hadn't played. I think, as Peter said, also they hadn't played when Bard was around.
Yeah,
and I think Nick underestimated the importance of sidekicks, and I found that. It came back to me. It was horribly familiar playing with Bard. The idea of, what shall I buy now? Oh, another Bard. Okay,
I did hear you utter the words Bard math at some point.
Yeah. Sorry, if anyone doesn't know, just perhaps should mention that when half elf Bard attacks, each attacking character die gets +1 attack and +1 defense for each of your other different character dice, which is kind of weird wording, actually.
Yes.
And the ruling says it is basically, it has to be unique non-bard characters. Except it doesn't say non-bard. And my question was, if you have 2 bards, and I can't remember how this used to play out, maybe you can help me. If you had two bards, when you're doing the buffs, does each bard count the other bard as a unique character or not?
Don't. If you have 2 bards, you're already winning the game. So
Well, that's the thing.
Matter.
We gave Nick another bite of the cherry, and we were sort of trying to get his rush to work, and it worked out pretty well. He did get really good rolls, but he didn't quite manage to pull it off, even, as Ben pointed out, even with the double bard. So sometimes you need that extra. I can't remember how it went. I really can't.
Okay, the rules are, if you have 2 bards and you can't win, then you forfeit the game.
There you go. And you have to sell all your dice. And never play again. Yeah, because of course the bard buff stacks, doesn't it? If you have multiple bards,
Yes.
then it, so you know, a kind of +4/+4 buff could become +8/+8, which then gets terrifying if you've got like 9 attack sidekicks.
It's well suited to me because I like just charging across, not thinking about it too much. And if all of your characters are 10/10, then you can afford to just push all your dice towards your opponent and go, okay, just deal with it. Just deal with it.
Yes, well,
Almost up
James,
to the power levels of the Thing.
Oh,
Dude,
how could it
not
ever?
quite.
Yeah,
Not quite.
Well, yeah. So thanks, James, for you and Nick for doing a bit of testing there. So kind of the conclusion is powerful, but not all conquering necessarily.
But watch this space. Watch this space.
More
We might do
testing
a bit more.
required. Yeah, excellent. Okay, well, let's move on to the next segment. Okay, well, in the previous episode, we discussed cards that could lay claim to being the best 2-cost in the modern meta, with 1 or 2 notable exceptions who either decided to put forward their favourite 2-cost or just some they fancied talking about. I'm not going to mention any names, but if you listen to the episode, you might better work it out. In any case, we said that we would throw it open to a poll so the matter could be settled by democratic vote, and we thought we'd reflect on some of the feedback and reveal the winner as voted for by you. Now, we did get a bit of feedback on the Facebook page. Nick Wiley said that 3 of the best 2-cost card in modern we didn't even talk about, which were Istrid Horn, Eddie Guerrero, and Nefarious Broadcast. Did we make a terrible oversight, guys?
Nah. No, Nefarious Broadcast I think is really good. And much more versatile than the other 2. But the other 2 are really good because Becky in Overcrush is really good, so...
Yeah, facilitators.
They certainly are. Yeah, are they the best on their own?
A marauding Istrid Horn.
Otherwise, Static Field is possibly the most used 2-cost in modern, but doesn't count. Same reasons PXG shouldn't win. Now he's referring to the previous Mark debate now. He's talking about that. But Static Field never gets used as an action, does it? So I think that should be discounted.
No, because it's
it
terrible.
only ever gets used as for the global. But regular listener Dana Patton, thanks for getting involved. He says, while all the cards on this list are great, the competition is not even close. Danny Moonstar is so far above the rest in terms of raw power and her ability to control the game when combined with a force block global. Danny for the win, he says. Ben, I think you'd probably agree with that one.
Yep. Someone after my own heart.
Yes.
And the correct.
Yeah, for sure.
I think he is actually entirely correct, to be honest.
He may well be.
Yeah, we're just trying to make Danny disappear.
I'm not allowed to talk about Danny, so
But
thanks for bringing it up, Dana.
No, thank you, Dana. But he does make the point that it says when combined with a force block global. I mean, obviously, she's still good on her own, but she really shines when she's got a force block global. If she doesn't have a force block global, she's not as good.
Well, let's see what the winner is, and then we'll talk about how good it is on its own.
Okay. All right. Well, okay, so let's announce the winner of the poll on the Facebook page to decide the best 2-cost in the modern meta. And virtual drum roll, please. The winner is Atlantis, City and Stronghold, that just pipped Danny Moonstar Empathic Illusion casting to the post, leaving Parasite Maxwell Jensen in third place, and then Yawning Portal, Comfortable in, and Eddie Guerrero I Steal in fourth place. And then there's a bunch of stuff that got one vote, and some things that didn't even get any votes at all, like Avengers ID card, Gazer, none.
For shame.
No love from the listeners for any of those cards. But yes, so Atlantis was declared the winner. Should we remind ourselves who put forward the various suggestions and which one of them was picked out as the overall winner?
Should we also remind ourselves who was just saying how ineffective certain cards are on their own? And I think we dismissed Eddie and Istrid on the basis that they don't win games. Well, neither does Atlantis, to be fair. I mean, I voted for it. I like it a lot. But I think Danny really is the true winner, to be honest. But
maybe
democracy says differently.
Well, indeed, yeah.
I think Black Widow probably, but never mind.
Yeah, could be. Yeah.
But it was a good debate. So anyway, Atlantis City and Stronghold came out as the overall winner. Nick, again, regular correspondent, was not happy. He says Atlantis is the best 2-class global, not card. I shall once again throw down the call of shenanigans. I think he's pulling a Donald Trump here. He's trying to cast doubt over the integrity of our election process. Nick, there's no shenanigans going on. There's just people voting.
Get the voter IDs on.
Robbed.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, but so there we go. So best 2-cost in Modern is Atlantis. What do you reckon? Is that a worthy winner? Let us know. Get in touch. Use the contact details at the end of the show. But it'd be good to hear your point of view. All right, shall we move on to a bit of AOB? James, Dice Fight is probably the main thing we need to talk about. What's coming up on the Dice Fight slate over the next couple of weeks?
If you're listening to this fresh, the next one will be on the 20th of May, which is just silver. It's the silver card pool, which, if you don't remember, is everything from Green Arrow, The Flash, onwards. So shiny cards onwards, and the competitive level is orange, and it was specifically orange just so Nick can play his Turtles team, and he wasn't sure how big it was. And then
he's had far too many mentions on this show.
Yes.
How much is he paying us?
Yeah.
Not enough.
On the 27th of May, we have the DC version of the Golden 10x10 we did at the end of last month, which was quite a success, actually. That worked out really well. So I think Ben said there are only 10 DC sets, so you're going to have to do some proper team building. But that should be quite interesting. Also, orange level, for better or for worse. So the orange ban list will apply. So both of those seem quite fun, I think.
Yeah, they should. And if you want to get involved in the fun, you just need to get onto the Discord Dice Masters Discord channel, where you can find all the details about Dice Fight. You can also find stuff on our website, and the fun starts at 9 p.m. UK time on those dates, 10 p.m. Central European time, and it's usually 3 rounds, James. So it normally lasts.
Yeah, always 3 rounds, and unless it's a draft, which takes about half an hour longer, it usually it's done inside 2, max 2.5 hours.
Yeah. So yeah, if you have a webcam and you fancy getting involved in that, then do get involved. It's a good little community. Other than that, I think that's everything from us for this particular episode. What did you make of the stuff about Avengers versus X-Men? Are there any particular cards that you think would be great fun to see back in the modern meta? What are those? Let us know. What's the best way of getting in touch, James? Our email address is
hello@dmunited.eu.
Indeed it is. Or you can send us a message on Facebook. If you've enjoyed the show, we'd love it if you could subscribe, rate, and review using your favourite podcast app. We'll be back with you in 2 weeks' time, and until then, it's goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Adios.
Bye.